Now call Baroness Bennet of Manor Castle.
My Lords, my noble friend Baroness Jones of Molescombe has already addressed the Green Group's support for a number of amendments in this group, and I won't repeat that. But I do want to address a number to which I've attached my name, starting with Amendment 8, focusing on whole farm, agroecological and agroforestry systems in the name of the noble Lord Teverson. I thank him for tabling it, and also the Earls of Dundee and Caithness for supporting it. It's clear that the age of industrial monoculture has given us the dreadful condition of our countryside that the noble lord was just addressing in the last speech. Its waters are polluted, its soil degraded, biodiversity is in collapse. And yet at the same time, we have a public with an awful diet and poor public health. We need a whole new approach. Actually, agroecological farming is the only kind of farming that we should see. Whole farm systems, and agroforestry is a crucial part of that. Trees sheltering animals, holding water, storing carbon, supporting biodiversity, producing healthier food, including fruits and nuts, and healthier and more varied fodder for livestock. We need to see the government supporting this transformation, although ultimately that needs to be how all of our land is managed. Now, we've already seen, I think, a significant move across most of the farming sector in terms of the approach to soils. There's been a rediscovery of the understanding that the natural fertility of soils depends on a flourishing ecosystem of microscopic animals, plants and fungi. And I will say to the noble Lord the Minister, and I hope he will think about this, that I continue to hold hopes that the government will sort out its description of fungi to make this bill scientifically literate, as it currently is not, following the issues that I raised in committee that are in no way political in nature, merely seeking to ensure technical accuracy. But what we need to do when we're focusing on agroecology and indeed agroforestry is we need to move towards crop diversity. That's part of whole farm varied systems. And it means a system that works with nature rather than trying to cosh it into submission. So I move now to Amendment 9, to which I've also attached my name in the name of the noble Lord Aldington, also backed by Lord Greaves and the noble Lady Baroness Grey Thompson. And I think sometimes we've almost lost track of the fact that this is the agriculture bill, and we are talking about environmental elements, but agriculture is also about food. We need joined up thinking, systems thinking. There's really no point in producing more sugar, something that the world has and consumes far too much of, as well as being a crop that does massive damage to rich and valuable soils. Whereas by contrast, growing fruit and vegetables is a super policy, the kind of thing that the government should be supporting, and which, if the policies have regard to health and well-being policies, it will have to do. I move then to Amendment 20 in the name of the noble Earl of Dundee, and also signed by the noble Lady Baroness Boycott, and particularly focusing on the peri-urban land, because perhaps mostly, and I probably have done this myself, in this bill we're talking about the countryside, but both in terms of environmental benefits and healthy food production, fringe areas, patches of lands in cities, in towns, in villages, that might be quite small areas, but they're absolutely crucially important. I'm sure the noble Lord the Minister is aware of an excellent article in 2019 published in the journal Nature, Ecology and Evolution, which found that allotments and gardens had often 10 times more bees and other pollinators than even what we think of as the rich environment of parks, cemeteries and urban nature reserves. Increasing allotments, increasing food growing can be really a positive sign for nature and of course for people as well, and which I would like to also express support for Amendment 6 about food security, to which that Amendment 20 also relates. Relying on the market to supply us with food has given us a dreadfully unhealthy diet, as the impact of COVID-19 is sadly demonstrated. One more weakness that the pandemic has exposed rather than caused. But it's also an insecure approach to rely on the market to supply food. Hundreds of millions of people in the world go hungry now, not because there's a lack of food, but a lack of access to it. And there is, of course, enormous waste in the system, particularly factory farming, feeding what could be perfectly good human food to animals. But we're in the age of shocks. We've just seen harvests in the US in particular recently hit hard by extreme weather, and there's a lot more, sadly, like that on the way. The state of soils is parlous. To assume that we can just buy what we need is dangerously uncertain. And there's also a moral question. Why should we be taking food out of the mouths of people in other countries when we could and should be growing our own? So that's two powerful reasons for the government to provide direct, clear support for food security. There can be few more foundational roles for a government than ensuring that people do not starve. And finally, I'd like to mention support for Amendment 48. I'll note the comments of the Noble Lady, Baroness McIntosh of Pickering, and express my agreement with them. Thank you, my lords.